Here's an old idea of mine. I completely forgot about it. It's funny how recapping old physics articles can really spark older ideas from your imagination. And one of them was cold fusion. I understand how we can achieve cold fusion, but it doesn't work in physics. Obviously, this sort of thing anyway. So I considered that. Okay, what would happen if we took two nuclei, two beta, or no, two alpha particles, and we shot them together in the Large Hadron Collider? They would just explode, right? But what if you took two stable atoms, two stable helium atoms, and you send them at such a high speed that they can overcome the Coulomb barrier, and once they get within each other's coulombs, is it possible to stop them? What if we could just stop them right at that moment, right when they start sharing the coulomb? And what would happen? I think that they'd become nuclear, probably. But what if they didn't? And what if you could create like a covalent bond, a nuclear bond, like a nuclear covalence? If that makes any sense, because I don't know another word for it. A fusile bond, where like two nuclei of two separate atoms can inhabit and share the same coulomb, but stabilize nuclearly, and then you could have like one nucleus sharing a group of neutrons, or which technically that should fuse. But what if you could have two nuclei share a similar proton? And that seems a little bit more far fetched, but it's still a really fun and interesting idea to think about. And like, what sort of matter could we produce? And what if we could formulate actual stable nuclear no, because nuclear isotope's a different thing. Yeah. So fusile isotopes, that then what would happen to the electrons too, and how they orbit? Would be really interesting, and how they interact with other atoms similar to that. And you could just create, like, basically the whole thing was it went down into creating an atom that functions like an electromagnet. It's just a natural electromagnet, and not an actual magnetic force, but an electromagnetic force, right? So this thing would resonate and vibrate and basically create its own electromagnetic energy. And it's one of the free energy concepts that I came up with 11 years, or not 11, 9 years ago. So 9 years ago, I was focused on free energy. I love thinking about it, right? Well, I'm one of those guys. I indulge. I like Agartha. I'm not an Agartha nerd. I'm not like, oh my god, the earth is hollow. I'm like, how could the earth be hollow if it was hollow? And I'm looking at stars across the entire shell of the planet and stuff like that. So I indulge. Anyway, that could be one potential way to genuinely have free energy, where we can create an actual atomic structure to live in biometrically that would just freely share electrons, and you'd have no waste, ideally. And that technology goes into other things too, which I dissolved the idea and then I modified it. I came up with other concepts for how to literally structure planets and create what I call god tier technologies that can formulate entire realities and universes and all this fancy fun stuff. It's just loads of crap in my imagination I have to get out. I can't keep it in there anymore. And you never talk about it. It's just more of just a pleasure for me. it's literally like brain masturbation for me, is what it is. And I think about all these various universes that could be possible if we don't decide one. So that also goes into philosophy and how. So a long time ago, around that time too, I came to this philosophical epiphany that we are all, we're like 7.5 billion realities walking on one reality. And if we had true individual diversity and everybody had their own perceptions of what this universe is and what we are, that, so that got me just thinking, like, how many ways is that possible? How is it possible to have true infinite potential with a philosophical structure in society? Anyway, there's so much stuff I gotta get out before. Make room for new things to think about, maybe, or just spark the imaginations of these next kids, because these next generation of kids are going to hopefully be pretty intelligent. I don't know, the pandemic showed that they're all really stupid now. It's not funny, but it is. That, it's kind of sad in a dark way, which I find is funny because I laugh to compensate, right? So if you don't laugh, which is just really sad. People are just making families and making children, but the entire infrastructure shut down. I thought people would be closer than ever. Arg! I got really sad. I got really sad there for a second. Anyway, so this, I don't really know what you would even call it. I yawned, I'm not sad. But it make my eyes look like they're tearing up. And what would you even call it? Like covalent fusile bonding? And what about, what's the other one? You have covalency. Wow, am I really not going to remember this? This is embarrassing. Ionic bonding, right? Ionization. So one would be like a covalency, which is I'm trying to correlate it to nuclear levels and wondering if we could use covalency and bonding as another way of different types of fusile bonding. And then it made me wonder too if there's a way to create like layered matter antimatter structures of atoms. So this is where it gets really funky. If you have the same quantum probability of mass to nuclear frames, that you can have orbiting antimatter particles that don't like annihilate with standard model particles to create like layered nuclear fissile structures. What do you call this shit? This is just another overthinking it sort of thing. It's hard to explain, and you need a whole other, you have to go into subquantum physics for this, and that's kind of partially where I ran into too as well. When I started thinking and considering what's smaller than the quantum level, there's so many things that we don't have conclusions for. So I was like, well, I'm gonna shrink it further. I'm not trained in physics. I don't care what you guys say about the Planck. So Ciao, ciao.